Hande Karaka, a quiet librarian in Galkaya, receives a letter from a dying woman, Ercel, Demirhan, mother of her former love, Kerem. Inside, a truth buried for 20 years. Hande's daughter, Lara, is also Kerem's. Now Kerem is returning to the coastal town unaware that the woman he once loved bore his child. Hande must face the man who broke her heart, and the daughter who doesn't know the truth. Lara confronts her mother after overhearing the truth. Kerem walks along the beach, wrestling with guilt. When father and daughter meet for the first time, no words are needed, just a bracelet, a gaze, and a second chance. Hande fears losing the only piece she's built, even as old love reignites. Lara discovers a hidden photo of Hande and Kerem, prompting questions Hande can't answer. Kerem confides in Nazin, Hande's best friend, learning how lies once shattered their love. When Lara disappears briefly, Hande fears losing her all over again. But Lara returns with more questions than ever. A stranger delivers an envelope to Lara, inside a photo of Kerem with another woman, and a warning: the truth hurts. Suspicion grows. Hande and Kerem suspect Omar, Kerem's jealous adoptive brother. Meanwhile, Lara begins to feel the pressure of a legacy she never asked for. Old wounds reopen. Lara finds legal documents showing that Ferit, Hande's old friend, once acted as her guardian. A furious Kerem learns that the very people he trusted helped bury the truth. Ferit admits he once loved Hande and tried to replace Kerem. Lara realizes she inherited more than talent. She inherited war. Lara receives a full scholarship to a conservatory in Vienna funded by the Demirhan Foundation. Hande warns it's a trap. Defton, the daughter Ferit never claimed, manipulates events behind the scenes. A hidden clause grants the foundation temporary legal guardianship over Lara. Kerem and Hande race to stop it. In Vienna, Lara feels both free and hunted. Her piano becomes her voice. Defton watches from afar. Kerem and Hande arrive too late to stop the contract. But the music speaks louder than legalities. Lara chooses her path, but loneliness follows her. In the shadows, someone from the past appears. Miran Demirhan. Miran reveals he is Kerem's nephew. Lara receives part of Sila's will, naming her a beneficiary under Miran's guardianship. What she doesn't know, Miran is more than a relative. He's her half-brother. Def pulls strings from Istanbul. The chessboard is full, and Lara is the queen everyone wants to control. Kerem obtains a DNA test. Miran and Lara share a father. When the truth comes out, Lara feels betrayed by all. Miran disappears. Lara plays a powerful solo piece titled Winter. During her final recital in Vienna, her pain turned into melody. The past is no longer a prison. It becomes her stage. Lara receives offers to study in New York. She rejects the Demirhan Foundation and walks away from their control. Kerem and Hande stand together for the first time as a family. Defton uncovers that even she was a pawn in Sila's old plan. In a final twist, Lara finds a note in her coat. I love you, daughter, but I am neither Kerem nor Ferit. I hope someday you forgive me. Your real father. As snow begins to fall in New York, Lara closes her eyes. Winter has come, but this time, she opens the door. Peace doesn't begin when winter ends. It begins when we forgive the storm. Lara adjusts to life in New York. A scholarship at Juilliard. New faces, new freedom. But in the quiet of her small apartment, she replays that letter. I am neither Kerem nor Ferit. She has two fathers who loved her and one she never knew. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, Defton disappears after uncovering the truth about her own identity. A USB drive is left behind, and in it, proof of illegal adoption records and financial schemes that could destroy the Demirhan legacy. Hande begins to write a memoir, not to publish, but to leave behind a record for Lara. One day, Kerem secretly hires an investigator to track down the man who claims to be Lara's real father. Some men hide from their sins, others build empires on them. The investigator finds him, Selçuk Aydemir, a political strategist, now living under a different name. He once had a brief relationship with Hande during her months away from Kerem, but Hande never told him she was pregnant. Selçuk has a family, a son, a wife, a career. If Lara discovers the truth, it could ruin everything. Kerem confronts Selçuk in private, offers him a deal. Stay away from Lara, come clean. Says only one thing: if she's like her mother, she'll find me. Truth, like music, always finds its way out of silence. Lara writes her first original symphony, titled Mother. During rehearsal, her mentor hears something strange in the final movement, an echo of a Turkish lullaby. Lara doesn't remember writing it. Hande, reading the memoir, breaks down. It was the song she used to hum when Lara was a baby, during her fevered nights in the hospital, back in Istanbul. Nazan finds a hidden photo in one of Sila's old books, a picture of Defin and Lara together, as toddlers, but they were never supposed to have met, unless someone else was watching over them both. She was never the forgotten child. She was the backup plan. Defin resurfaces, but not as an enemy. She contacts Lara through an anonymous message. You and I are more connected than you think. They meet in Paris. There, Defin reveals the truth. Sila had two targets, one to carry the Demirhan legacy, and one to carry the blame. Lara and Defin. One was always meant to fall. Lara struggles. Can she trust her sister? Can you trust someone who once tried to destroy you if they were just trying to survive? Back in Turkey, Ferit falls gravely ill, and with his life on the line, he finally decides to tell Lara everything. In a video recording, the ones who hurt us the most sometimes wanted to protect us the hardest. Ferit's health declines. On his deathbed, he records a message for Lara. I loved your mother the moment she walked into that hospital. I tried to be your father when the world turned its back. I never wanted to replace Kerem. I just wanted to matter. But he never sends the file. After his death, Layla finds the USB. She hesitates, sends it to Hande instead. Hande watches alone, tears rolling down her face, then deletes it. She deserves to write her story without guilt. Every truth has a cost. And every silence, an interest rate. Selçuk is exposed. Journalists dig into his past. Anonymous files leak online. He denies everything until Lara confronts him at a music event in Berlin. I'm not here to ruin you. I'm here to find out if you're even capable of love. Selçuk doesn't deny being her biological father, but says something unexpected. I never came for you, because I saw how well Kerem raised you from a distance. I would have only made you smaller. Back in New York, Lara breaks down. She composes 3 fathers, a suite in 3 movements. One for the man who gave her love, one for the man who gave her talent, one for the man who gave her nothing. And yet, she forgives all 3. Some wars end not with peace, but with understanding. Lara and Defin travel to Galkia together. For the first time, as allies, they revisit the house where Sila once ruled. Inside, they find a letter never mailed. To my daughters, I could never be your mother. Only your warning. They burn it on the beach. Defne admits she wants nothing from the Demirhans anymore. Only one thing. I want to be free, and maybe, I want a sister. Lara hesitates, then takes her hand. Closure doesn't always sound like applause. Juilliard, final concert of the season. Lara debuts her original symphony, Inheritance. Hande and Kerem sit in the audience, so does Selçuk hidden in the back, and Defin, standing in the wings. The music flows like a lifetime in reverse. Loss, love, rebirth, standing ovation. Tears fall quietly. Lara bows, not for the crowd, for herself. What you become is not who you were born to be, it's what you survive. Lara publishes her first book, When Winter Knocked. It becomes a sensation, half memoir, half poetry, full heart. The final chapter ends with the line, I was born from silence, raised by secrets, and healed by choosing my own voice. Winter knocked. I opened. Spring came in. Lara returns to Galkaya. One last time. She visits the old house, the cliff, the sea, walks beside her. Hande follows quietly. In her hands, Lara holds the ashes of a letter, one she never read, from a father she never needed. She scatters them into the sea. I'm not afraid of the winter anymore, she says. She smiles. The first flower of spring grows by the rock's end. Some letters don't get lost, they're hidden, because the truth inside them doesn't just change a life, it burns everything around it. The letter had been written exactly 20 years ago. The handwriting was careful, almost shy, the kind of penmanship used when someone's trying to say something for the last time. It was sealed with two initials, JS, and it never reached its destination. Until now, Elias had never been curious about his past. At least, not in a dangerous way. He had grown up with his mother, Hande, a respected lawyer in Seville, and that was enough, or so he thought. The day the letter appeared, it wasn't inside a box, or a drawer, or a forgotten book. It arrived in an anonymous envelope. No sender, no postmark, just his name, handwritten. Inside, a letter, yellowed by time, and one sentence that would shatter everything. I should have fought harder to be your father, but I was told you didn't exist. Julian Sancilias Frosa. He had never heard that name in his life. When he confronted his mother that night, she didn't lie, but she didn't tell the whole truth. Either Julian was someone I cared for deeply, she said, avoiding his eyes. So he's my father. No. Or, maybe, I don't know. What do you mean? You don't know? Hande took a deep breath. I was with him, and shortly after, I was with Kerem. That name hit harder. Kerem Aslan Elias had grown up knowing him as the friend who disappeared, the Turkish businessman who helped fund Hande's legal career when Elias was still a baby. But Elias had never met him. He had never questioned why. Now, he had too. Meanwhile, in a hotel in Malaga, a man reread the same letter from 20 years ago. His hands were shaking. Kerem had kept the original copy. He had written it just before leaving Spain, on the same day he found out Hande was pregnant and then gone, or rather, was made to leave. He has my eyes, Kerem whispered, looking at a photo someone had slipped under his door. It was a printout from social media. Elias, now 20 years old, a boy who looked nothing like Julian, but everything like him. That night, Elias opened his laptop and typed in, "Who was Julian Scenes?" What he found was simple, a small obituary, dated 2005, a name, a date, a cause of death, heart failure, a career, pediatrician, and one sentence that stood out. He dedicated his life to others, but left with a story untold. Elias knew that story was him. Some truths are heavy, others are radioactive. And when a letter travels 2 decades to find you, it's not a coincidence, it's a reckoning. Sometimes the hardest part isn't telling the truth, it's looking into the eyes of the person you lied to, and realizing they look just like the one you hid it from. Dawn in Seville arrived like a lie, soft, quiet, and pretending nothing had changed, but everything had. Hande had been awake long before the sun. She hadn't slept. Not really. She had rehearsed this moment for 2 decades, but now that Elias had read the letter, nothing felt under control. She walked into the kitchen and found him already there. Elias was no longer a boy. He was 21, tall, calm on the outside, but with eyes full of fire. Eyes that didn't just ask questions, they demanded answers. Who was that man in the photo? He asked, not looking up from his untouched coffee. Hande hesitated. An old business partner, a business partner or my father. The mug nearly slipped from her hands. Hospital room. Hande holds a newborn Elias in her arms. At her side is her best friend, Cristina Marquez. Are you going to tell Kerem? Cristina asked. Nervous. No, I'm not sure. What happened? With Julian, it was only once, a mistake. And now it's too late. What if Kerem never forgives you? Then he'll hate me, but I'd rather be hated for what I hide than abandoned for what I reveal. She sealed the secret that night, but secrets, like old letters, always find their way back in the present. Elias sat in his university library, pretending to read. His mind was elsewhere. He searched the name online again. Kerem Aslan. Photos, interviews, headlines, Turkish, entrepreneur, producer, investor. One image caught his breath. Kerem, holding a child in his arms, years ago. A child who wasn't him, but who looked disturbingly familiar. Meanwhile, Christina Marquez walked into Han's office uninvited, still sharp, still perfect, still cold. "He's back," Christina said. Han didn't flinch. "What do you want?" "Christina, Kerem came to my office. He wants answers. About the boy." Han turned slowly toward her. "What did you tell him?" Christina smiled, thin, cruel. "That I didn't know, that it was your secret to reveal, or your burden to bury." That evening, Elias received an unexpected message from an anonymous number. "You deserve the truth. Meet me, AA, in a quiet cafe near the Triana Bridge." Kerem waited. Hande arrived first. "Did you talk to him?" Kerem asked without preamble. "Yes, he asked if you were his father, and I lied." Kerem exhaled, not in surprise and disappointment. "I asked him to take a DNA test. He said he'd think about it." "What will you do if he's not your son?" Kerem didn't blink. "I'll still be the man who would have loved him anyway." That night, Elias sat alone in his room. He looked at the envelope containing the test kit. Next to it, a note from Kerem. "Blood doesn't make a father, but truth makes a man. You decide." He stared at it for a long time, not because he didn't want to know, but because he wasn't sure he'd survive what the answer would take from him. The silence after the fire is the loudest of all, and once a son begins to question the name he carries, nothing remains untouched. The moment before the truth arrives is worse than the truth itself, because the waiting isn't silence, it's a scream you keep swallowing over and over again. Elias stood in the pharmacy aisle longer than anyone ever should, not because he didn't know which test to buy. He already had one at home. He just didn't want to walk out with it, because walking out meant walking in to a truth that might detonate everything behind him. The pharmacist looked at him with polite disinterest. Another young man with questions about his past. Nothing unusual, but for Elias it wasn't biology he feared, it was betrayal. Back at home, he sat at his desk with 2 swabs, 2 vials, and a trembling sense of purpose. Across town, Kerem did the same. They had agreed to take the test separately. No cameras, no lawyers, just science. One truth, 2 lives, and a countdown. Han sat alone in her office. She hadn't spoken to either of them since the test. She felt like a ghost watching her own trial, powerless, present, and guilty in ways no one could quite define. On her desk sat a letter she'd never sent, addressed to Elias, written the day he was born. "If someday you find out who he was, I hope you hate me a little less than I hate myself for keeping it from you." She never mailed it. She never even folded it. Now it stared back like a wound that refused to scar. Across the marble floors of a law firm built on secrets, Christina Marquez watched the chaos from a distance. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to lie, because she had already made her move. A phone call to an old contact at a private genetics lab in Istanbul. When the results arrive, "Send me both copies," she ordered. "I want to see who breaks first, the father, the son, or the mother." Days passed. Elias went about life like a man wearing clothes soaked in gasoline, knowing that, at any moment, someone might strike a match. Classes, coffee, numb conversation, but everything was static, until it wasn't. One morning, the envelope arrived. He didn't open it. He stared at it for hours. That same envelope had also arrived for Kerem. He held it, but didn't move, because when you've spent your whole life wondering if you're someone's father, a single sentence can feel like a death certificate or a resurrection. Elias finally opened it. One line in bold: "Probability of paternity, 99.98%, confirmed, biological father." He sat back. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He didn't move, because in that moment, he was no longer possibly anything. He was someone's son. Meanwhile, Christina poured herself a glass of wine and smiled. The truth had arrived. Now, all that remained was using it to burn someone. Truth isn't a gift, it's a key. And once you use it, you better be ready to open every door it unlocks. The truth is rarely loud, until someone puts a microphone in front of it. And once the world starts listening, Even honesty becomes a weapon. The meeting was meant to be private, no press, no drama, no sudden explosions, just Kerem and Elias, sitting across from each other for the first time, as father and son. Not maybe, not possibly, confirmed, but fate had other plans. And fate wore high heels and designer perfume. Christina Marquez watched from her office window as a young reporter rehearsed his lines outside. He held the printed DNA report in his hands, the one she leaked anonymously. Make sure you use the words hidden heir, she had told the producer, not illegitimate son. People love a fairy tale, not a scandal. The reporter nodded. And what about the mother? Christina smiled thinly. Just call her complicated. It'll do more damage than any accusation. Inside the quiet restaurant in Malaga, Kerem arrived early. He wore no tie. His eyes were calm, but watchful. He hadn't slept much. How could he? He was about to sit across from the boy he never raised, but had never stopped wondering about. Elias walked in 5 minutes late. No apologies. No hesitation. They shook hands, not like strangers, not like family, like two men who shared something too heavy for language. So it's true, Elias said first. Kerem nodded. I never doubted it, but I needed to be sure. For you? There was a long silence. Then, Elias asked the question he had rehearsed for days. Why didn't you fight for me? Kerem looked him in the eye. I never knew you existed until it was too late, and by the time I tried to come back, I had already been erased by my mother. Kerem paused, then shook his head slowly. By fear, hers, mine, everyone's. And now, I don't want to rewrite the past. I just want to see what you do with your future. Before Elias could respond, cameras flashed through the restaurant, window reporters, microphones, shouting. Someone had tipped them off. Someone had handed them the DNA test. And now the world wanted answers. Kerem stood. Come with me. They slipped through the back door and into a car waiting in the alley. It was a getaway, not from danger, but from a world that never lets two people have a moment without turning it into a headline. That evening, every news outlet carried the story. Spanish law student confirmed as heir to Turkish business empire, the hidden son of Kerem Aslan. The photo showed Elias mid-step caught between his father and the crowd. The world saw a headline. Elias saw a trap. Back in Seville. Hande watched it unfold on her screen. Alone. She knew who leaked it. Christina's fingerprints were always invisible, but unmistakable. Hande poured herself a glass of water, opened her drawer, and pulled out the one thing she swore never to use, a video recording, one that could destroy Christina or save them all. Sometimes the truth saves a life. Other times, it sells it to the highest bidder. And now, Elias doesn't just have a father, he has a spotlight, and in it, every secret burns hotter. Figure from Kerem's past, a brother who was thought to be dead, want to continue. A surname isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a curse, because when a name carries power, everyone wants to use it, own it, or destroy it. Elias woke up to chaos. His phone buzzed with hundreds of messages. Social media had exploded overnight. The lost son, the hidden heir, the silent scandal. He was everywhere. Talk shows speculated. Gossip blogs stalked him. Even classmates began to look at him with curiosity or calculation. His life was no longer his, all because of a surname, all because of Aslan. Kerem had retreated from the public eye. Temporarily, his lawyers handled the noise, the claims, the vultures, but Kerem was worried about something far worse than the press. A letter had arrived at his estate. No signature, just handwriting he hadn't seen in 20 years. One sentence, your brother didn't die, and he hasn't forgiven you. Yusuf, the brother presumed dad, the older son, the one who vanished during the earthquake in Istanbul, and who, apparently, was back, not to reconcile, but to take everything. Christina Marquez had never felt more powerful. Hande was weakened. Kerem was exposed. Elias was lost in the spotlight, and now, she had Yusuf Aslan, He had returned quietly, under a different name, older, colder, and hungrier than ever. Christina offered him what he needed: legal access, financial leverage, and a stage. In return, Yusuf would help her take down Kerem piece by piece, and if Elias got in the way, he would be neutralized. Meanwhile, Hande stormed into Christina's office. "No more games. You're using a man who faked his death to manipulate my son." Christina didn't flinch. "Correction. I'm helping a man who was erased by his own brother reclaim what's his. You don't care about him. No. I care about what he represents. Leverage. And leverage, dear Hande, is the only truth that wins in court. Touch Elias, and I'll bury you myself." Christina smiled, sipping her coffee. "You already tried, and I'm still standing." That same day, Elias walked through the Murillo Gardens, trying to breathe. He was stopped by a woman, older, kind, unfamiliar. "You're Elias, aren't you? Do I know you?" "No, but I knew Julian." He froze. "You knew him. We volunteered together. He always talked about you. Said he never got to be your father, but he never stopped hoping you'd learn the truth." She handed him an envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter from Julian. "If Elias ever reads this, tell him I didn't leave because I didn't love him. I left because I was told to. I don't know if I'm his real father, but I would have protected him as if I were." Elias blinked back tears. The woman touched his arm gently. "Some fathers aren't born in blood, they're born in sacrifice." Then she walked away. That night, Kerem invited Elias to dinner, just the two of them. The conversation was awkward, quiet, but honest. Kerem said, "I won't ask you to carry my name, or my legacy." "You don't owe me anything," Elias replied. "I don't want your name because of inheritance. I want it because I've earned it, surviving everything it cost me." Kerem smiled, proud, tired, then "Welcome, son." But the next morning, Christina held a press conference. In front of dozens of cameras, she announced, "I represent Yusuf Aslan, the rightful co-founder and heir of the Aslan corporate legacy. And we are opening an official fraud investigation against Kerem Aslan for concealment of paternity and embezzlement of family wealth." The crowd gasped, and then Yusuf stepped into view. Alive. Standing beside Christina. Eyes full of war. Elias claimed his name, but names come with enemies, and when your bloodline carries both wealth and betrayal, your last name becomes your battlefield. There comes a moment when the son stops asking why they hid him, and starts asking what they raised him to become. If you raised him in silence, don't be surprised when he learns to break it with noise. From the moment Yusuf Aslan stood in front of the cameras beside Cristina Marquez, everything changed. This was no longer about paternity. This was war. Legal documents were filed. Allegations of financial concealment, mismanagement, and fraud spread like wildfire. Kerem's name began to crumble under the pressure of suspicion. But the most dangerous blow wasn't legal. It was emotional. Elias watched the press conference from his phone in silence. Yusuf looked like him, just older, heavier, eyes full of something sharp, not hate, worse, calculation. Beside him, Christina looked like victory in heels. And in that moment, Elias knew he was no longer being protected. He was being played. Kerem called an emergency meeting. Hande joined. 2 Turkish attorneys attended, via video. Christina submitted a claim that Yusuf's rights as co-founder were illegally removed when he was declared deceased. One of them explained, "They're arguing that Kerem took control of the Spanish assets unethically." "And what does that have to do with Elios?" Hande asked. "They're making it about legacy. They want to destroy Kerem's credibility by turning Elias into an illegitimate heir." Kerem's jaw tightened. "They're not after the company, they're after the memory," Hande whispered, "and they're going to use Elias to rewrite it." That night, Elias entered the room without knocking. "Don't protect me anymore," he told them. "You don't need to get involved." Kerem tried. "Yes, I do, because you all spent 20 years making choices I never had a say in. That ends now." He looked at them like a man. "If I carry this name, Then I'll defend it, but on my terms. Kerem nodded, slowly, because Elias Aslan had awakened. Meanwhile, Christina studied her next move. She didn't want a court victory. She wanted a moral collapse, and that meant breaking Hande. She called a contact at a private hospital in Seville. Decades-old medical records were requested. Hidden files, mental health documentation. One name appeared on a sealed record, Hande La Vega, admitted, 2004. Diagnosis, postpartum depression. Duration, 3 weeks. Temporary legal guardianship of child, transferred to LoveInSilence. Christina smiled, because secrets like this don't just stain, they ruin. She leaked the report to a tabloid, with one headline request. When the mother left, documents revealed, Hande Vega temporarily gave up her son due to psychiatric episodes. Within hours, it was everywhere. Photos of a young Hande entering a clinic. Words like unfit, unstable, abandonment. Elias saw it. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He simply packed a bag and left. Hande found out through her assistant. She collapsed into a chair, not from shock but from grief. Because Christina had crossed a line. And this time, it wasn't just war. It was personal. Christina toasted herself that evening, wine in hand, the world on mute. Why, UF looked at her. You enjoy this? No, I savor it. You sure you want to go this far? She stared at the city lights. I already did. Elias is no longer the hidden child. He's the voice they all want to silence. And with each step he takes, he wakes new enemies. The most dangerous one wears heels and perfume. And she doesn't want revenge anymore. She wants blood. Sometimes the end doesn't come with a bang. It comes with a whisper you weren't supposed to hear, and a truth no one wanted you to survive. Elias hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Not Kerem, not Hande, not the press, not NOOR. He had become a ghost in his own story, and maybe that was the only way to protect himself, because when the world makes your name a headline, sometimes the only thing left to do is erase it. Christina wasn't celebrating this time. She had released the clinic report expecting a meltdown, a breakdown, a dramatic collapse, but what she got was worse. Silence. Not even public outrage, just distance. Cold, thick silence between a mother and son that spoke louder than any victory speech. That was real power, or so she thought. Why UF sat in the shadows of his brother's ruin, watching it all with a kind of quiet hunger. But power, he was learning, came with a cost. Because Elias hadn't crumbled. He was watching. And he had started asking questions. That's what led Elias to an old nursing home on the outskirts of Malaga. He had tracked down someone who hadn't spoken in years. Teresa Ortega. She had once worked at the hospital where LoveInSilence died. She remembered everything. And before she passed away a month ago, she left a video, not for Hande, not for Kerem, for Elias. In it, she said, they lied to you, but not the way you think. Julian, he knew the truth, and he recorded it the night before he died. Teresa had saved the tape, hidden it for years, out of fear. Now, it belonged to Elias. The video played in a small, dusty projector room, grainy footage, a pale face, Julian, dying, speaking softly. If you're watching this, Elias, then I'm already gone. I'm not your father, but I was willing to be, because Kerem was gone, and your mother was broken, and I loved you both. But here's what no one will tell you. Christina knew. She knew Kerem was your father. She destroyed the letter that could have brought him back. She made Hande believe that silence was mercy. She made a decision for all of us. And that's what really broke your family. Elias froze. Christina hadn't just twisted the truth. She had built the lie. He didn't call anyone. He didn't release the tape. He went to Christina. Her office. No appointment, no security. She looked up, surprised. Come to thank me for making you famous. He sat down. No. To end it, he placed a USB on her desk. Play it, or I will. She stared at the drive. Her hand didn't move, because for the first time, she looked afraid. That night, the video was leaked anonymously. Not to the press, not to the public. To Elias's followers. And from there, it spread like fire. Not as scandal, but as a warning. a reckoning. Christina stepped down from the firm 3 days later. No statement, no camera, just silence. Her own weapon, finally turned against her. Yusuf disappeared again. No trace, no exit. Like a shadow melting into itself. He had tried to claim a legacy, but it had never been his, because power without truth crumbles. Hande and Elias met on a Sunday. She waited on the bench where she once read him fairy tales as a child. He came. They didn't talk about the past, only the future. Will you forgive me someday? She asked. No, he said, but I'll walk beside you anyway. She nodded, tears in her throat, because forgiveness wasn't the point. He had chosen to stay. Kerem never asked for a second chance, but Elias gave it to him anyway, not as father and son, but as two men who survived the same silence. Final scene, years later, a university exhibition, a structure of stone, glass, and rusted iron, an architectural metaphor. The title, Ashes That Grew Roots. Designer, İlyas Begaslan. In the description plaque, this work is dedicated to those who survived, not by speaking loudly, but by living truthfully after everyone else had lied. The room falls silent, not out of sadness, but respect, because the boy who was hidden is no longer anyone's secret. The end. The rain fell as if the sky cried for those who can no longer do so, and he, with all his wealth, had never felt so empty. Madrid, a city of lights, shadows, and silences. That night, raindrops hit the windows of the black car like they were trying to wake him from a life he no longer felt. In the back seat, Kerem Demir, elegant and distant, watched the reflection of the city without really seeing it. Owner of one of the largest hotel empires in Europe, he was also a prisoner of a past he couldn't forgive or forget. Sir, someone is blocking the street. The driver's voice made him blink. Kerem looked up, annoyed. He was about to order the driver to keep going, not to stop for anything or anyone. But then he saw her dot in the rain, soaked and fragile like an abandoned prayer. A young woman was picking up flowers fallen on the ground. Her red hair fell over her back like a soft fire. She held a white cane. Her hands moved, searching for scattered stems. It was clear, she couldn't see. Kerem froze. Something inside him, dormant for years, stirred. He opened the car door without thinking, walked toward her. Didn't care about getting wet or the shock on the driver's face. He knelt, touched the flowers. She jumped slightly. Who's there? Her voice was firm but sweet, innocent but alert. Just someone picking up stray flowers, miss. She frowned. I don't need help. I know, but flowers don't deserve to be left alone. He handed her the wet stems. She accepted them gently. Thank you. Kerem stared at her. No one said thank you to him without fear. No one treated him with that calm. Your name? Hande. Altane. I'm Kerem. She nodded, unaware that name moved millions. I don't need you to help me cross the street, Kerem. I know, but maybe I need to walk with you. Hande smiled, just barely, as if something invisible between them had just been born. Then walk with me. But don't guide my steps. Kerem offered his arm. She refused. Just match my pace. Nothing more. And under the rain, they walked. One seeing the world, with empty eyes wide open. The other, not seeing, felt everything. That night Kerem didn't return to his office. He returned to his past. To the boy abandoned by a mother who never came back. To the young man who promised he'd never need anyone. But now, something trembled in his chest. The next morning, he searched for her name. Hande Altane, florist, 28 years old, owner of a shop called The Language of Flowers, blind since 19, no close family, independent, alone. Kerem closed the laptop. He didn't know what this emptiness he felt when he wasn't near her was. He only knew he couldn't avoid it. That same afternoon, he stepped out of the black car, no bodyguards, no warning, and crossed the street to her shop. The bell rang. The scent of lilies surrounded him. She, behind the counter, lifted her face. Good afternoon. How can I help you? I don't know. Maybe help me understand why I can't stop thinking about you. She fell silent, then smiled, just slightly. Then you need something stronger than flowers, maybe answers. And without knowing it, they had just begun something neither of them would be able to stop. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something more dangerous, the beginning of a memory that could never be erased. She didn't know his name. He didn't understand why he couldn't stop thinking about her. And yet, the silence between them already spoke volumes. The sound of rain still echoed in Leonardo's mind as he held that single flower. Isabella's flower shop, Isabella's garden, had marked him in ways he couldn't explain. The next morning, against every instinct shaped by years of business logic, Leonardo Salazar did something he'd never done before. He went back. No security, no warning, no business excuse. He just went. As he stepped into the shop, the same delicate aroma welcomed him, and so did she. That red hair cascading like fire, carefully arranging white tulips with the precision of someone who knew the soul of every petal. You're back, Isabella said, without looking up, only listening. Need more flowers. Leonardo smiled. How could she recognize him by voice alone? Maybe, or maybe I just wanted to see if you remembered me. She stopped what she was doing, tilted her head slightly. You're the one who didn't know what kind of flower he wanted, right? He laughed, softly. Somehow, her sarcasm didn't sting, it disarmed him. That's me. She approached the counter. Then tell me, are you here for flowers, or for answers? He hesitated, because, in truth, he didn't know. Maybe both, he finally whispered. Isabella turned, selected a few stems, and began to wrap them. White roses, they symbolize respect, but also the beginning of something uncertain. Something you're not sure is worth it, but you still want to try. He swallowed. How could a blind florist read him so well? I didn't come just for flowers, Isabella. I came for you. She didn't flinch. She finished the bouquet and handed it to him. Then, don't hide behind petals. When you're ready to talk for real, come back. Leonardo took the bouquet with trembling hands. She'd already won. He left the shop without another word, walked through the streets of Madrid holding those white roses like they carried someone else's heart. That night, in his penthouse high above the city, Leonardo stared at the bouquet on the table, as if it were a question he still couldn't answer, because she didn't need him, didn't admire him, didn't chase him, and maybe that's exactly why he couldn't let her go. She gave him a bouquet with no price, and for the first time in his life, he felt indebted to something other than the past. But when he returns, he'll find out that Isabella's past isn't as quiet as it seems. He had everything, except the power to stop thinking about her. And the more she ignored him, the more he wanted to stay. Leonardo Salazar's routine had always been predictable: meetings, contracts, power, control. But ever since meeting Isabella, none of that seemed to matter. Every morning, he promised himself he wouldn't go back to her shop. And every afternoon, his car drove there without permission. Her flower shop had become his one escape from the world. In that space of petals and scents, Leonardo felt something he couldn't name: peace, longing, frustration, curiosity, everything, all at once. That day, he entered without knocking. The soft chime of the bell announced him. As always, Isabella, behind the counter, lifted her head slightly. She couldn't see him, but she knew it was him. "You again," she murmured, with the hint of a smile. "Does it bother you?" he asked, unsure if he wanted her to say yes or no. She shook her head. "No, it just intrigues me. Why would a man like you come back, day after day, to a place like this?" Leonardo hesitated. He didn't know the answer. "Not really. Maybe because here, I don't have to pretend." Isabella raised an eyebrow, amused. "And what do you pretend out there?" Leonardo stared at her, with the gaze of someone who's worn too many masks. "That nothing affects me. That I'm not afraid of being alone." Silence settled between them, not awkward, not empty, a silence that said more than words ever could. She didn't respond, just handed him a bouquet. "Daisies today. They symbolize truth and simplicity. Maybe that's what you need right now." Leonardo took the flowers, but what he truly felt was the brief touch of her hand brushing his. That fleeting contact, almost nothing, but absolutely everything. "And you?" he asked softly. "What do you need, Isabella?" She chuckled faintly. "Nothing money can buy." He looked at her deeply, like a man who, for the first time, had no idea what to do. Because this wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was a need. And the worst part, she didn't even know it. Or maybe she did, and simply didn't care. Leonardo could buy an empire, but he didn't know if he could win the heart of a woman who didn't see him as a god. And that, for the first time, made him feel vulnerable. He could control markets, businesses, fates, but he couldn't control what she made him feel, and that terrified him more than losing millions. Since meeting Isabella, Leonardo Salazar hadn't been the same. The powerful businessman, cold and calculating, now found himself checking the clock not for contracts, but to know how soon he could see her again, and he couldn't understand it. How could a blind florist who didn't even know who he really was hold him so captive? That afternoon, the sky over Madrid turned gray. The kind of gray that once seemed indifferent to him. But now, that color reminded him of her eyes, of Isabella's eyes, that didn't see but spoke louder than 1,000 empty glances. He stepped into the shop and saw her again, among flowers. Her green dress looked like it had bloomed from the garden itself. "You're late, rich man," she said without turning. He smiled for the first time all day. "I had a meeting, but I couldn't miss hearing your voice." Isabella let out a soft laugh. "You're good with words. Always been that way." "No, with you, it's different. You don't fear me. You don't admire me. You don't want anything from me. And still, I can't stay away." She lowered her head, an unreadable expression on her face. "And what do you want from me, Leonardo?" He moved closer. The scent of jasmine and gardenias wrapped around them. "I don't know. I just don't want to stop seeing you." Isabella pressed her lips together. "I don't need a savior, or a passing whim." Leonardo felt the truth of her words cut him, because even he wasn't sure whether this was love, or an obsession dressed up in tenderness. "And I don't need someone who fears me," he whispered. "But you're the only one who doesn't see me as a shadow." She lifted her face toward him. "I don't see shadows, Leonardo. I only listen to hearts." And in that moment, he felt his own heart speaking louder than ever. "Then tell me," he murmured, "what do you hear in mine?" Isabella tilted her head, listening. The silence stretched like a suspended confession. Fear and longing, pain and tenderness, and something else. Something you're still too scared to name. Leonardo stepped back, because it was true. All of it. No one had ever seen him like this, and she without ever seeing saw it all. That night, for the first time, Leonardo wished she could see him, not so she'd know who he was, but so she'd understand how deeply he was already loving her without knowing how. He could change the fate of thousands with a signature, but he didn't know how to change his own without her. Night fell over Madrid like a whisper. The city lights sparkled beneath Leonardo's penthouse window. but none of them carried the warmth of a gaze he could never have. Isabella. Since meeting her, something inside him had either broken or healed a way he hadn't realized he needed. He couldn't sleep that night. The whiskey tasted like nothing. The silence weighed more than usual. He picked up his phone. Isabella, her name glowed on the screen. But he didn't dare call. What would he say? That he thought of her like a childhood memory he never had, that he missed her voice before even walking away. The next morning, he arrived at the flower shop earlier than usual. She was opening up, her red hair danced in the breeze, and her ivory dress looked like it belonged in a poem. "You're here without needing to buy flowers," she said, not turning. Leonardo stayed silent. "I just came to listen to you." Isabella smiled faintly. "Did you know flowers have memory?" she asked. "Orchids remember the last place they bloomed, just like the heart." Leonardo swallowed hard. "And do you remember anything about me?" She turned slowly, though her eyes couldn't see. Her face held a truth that made him ache. "I remember your voice, when it trembles, your silence, when you almost say something but don't, and your hands, when you give me flowers like you're looking for an excuse to stay." Leonardo stepped closer. She didn't move back. "Isabella, she raised her hand, soft and calm. "Don't say anything, unless it's from your soul." So he did something he hadn't done in years. He knelt on the middle of petals and stems, with his head down and his heart bare like a boy who finally admits he needs love. "I don't know how to love, Isabella. No one ever taught me." She knelt too, right in front of him, and with a tenderness that shattered him, she placed her hand over his chest. "Then start here. Where fear beats, love begins." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he didn't want to be the man who could buy everything. He wanted to be the man who could finally give something away. She was just beginning to trust, but his past never asked permission to return. The flower shop smelled of lilacs that afternoon. The air carried a sweet hush, and for a fleeting moment, Leonardo believed pain could be forgotten among petals. Isabella stood by the window, watering quietly. Leonardo watched her with a mix of tenderness and fear. Fear of not deserving her. Fear she'd discovered the truth too soon. "Are you okay?" she asked, still facing the glass. "No," he replied with a voice more honest than he remembered ever using. She lowered the watering can. "Is it because of me?" He shook his head, then said, "What hurt?" "It's because of someone who came back." Isabella frowned slightly. "Someone important." Leonardo swallowed hard. "My ex." The silence that followed was sharp, like glass breaking in the air. "I didn't know you were married," she murmured. "It was years ago. I loved her, or thought I did. But when my world collapsed, she was the first to leave. She showed up yesterday with something I didn't expect." What Leonardo closed his eyes. A child. Isabella felt something inside her fracture, but she didn't cry. She stepped forward, voice trembling. "Is he yours?" "I don't know. She says he is. Says she has proof." She stepped back. "And what do you feel?" Leonardo moved toward her, took her hands. "That now that I have you near me, everything I was scares me. I don't want to lose you to a past I never knew how to bury. And if the child is yours, then I'll learn to be a father. But I also want to learn to stay with you." Isabella breathed in deeply. "And do you think you can do that without running again?" Leonardo lowered his head. "With you, yes." That night, Leonardo went to the hotel where ex-wife was staying. He found her at the bar, a glass in hand, and a smile that no longer meant anything to him. "What do you really want?" he asked. "I want you to meet Nicholas. He has 8. And he sleeps the same way you used to." Leonardo shut his eyes. "And if he is mine, I'm not here for money. I just want you to know, if you're not in his life now, you won't get a second chance." The next day, Leonardo met the boy for the first time. He was quiet, his eyes honest, and something inside. Leonardo whispered yes, this child could be his. That afternoon, he returned to the flower shop. Isabella was there, shoulders tense. "Did you see him?" Leonardo nodded, double quotes, "Yes, and I think he's mine." She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "Then you can't love only me." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "If you choose to love, it can't be divided. You have to love without fear. Him, and me." Leonardo looked at her, throat tight. "Then teach me how." She approached and embraced him. "You start here. No conditions. No past. Just from today." She forgave his past. but she wasn't ready for the future it carried. It was 11:12 p.m. when Isabella received the message. Short, cold, almost soulless. "He'll come to the flower shop tomorrow. I want you to meet him, Leonardo." She didn't reply. She simply placed the phone on the table and exhaled deeply, because while her face remained calm, her heart had nowhere to rest. The next morning, the air felt heavier. The flowers opened slower, like they sensed this day wasn't ordinary. At exactly 10 a.m., Leonardo arrived. Beside him stood a boy with dark hair and wide, quiet eyes. Nicholas, 8 years old, but with the gaze of someone who had lived too much in silence. Isabella stepped out from the back, wearing the same blue apron Leonardo loved. "Hi," she said gently. "Hi," replied the boy without looking away. Leonardo crouched next to him. "Nicholas, this is Isabella. Is she your girlfriend?" the boy asked, without hesitation. Leonardo froze. Isabella smiled, just barely. "We're friends. For now," she answered. Nicholas lowered his head. "My mom said you'd make him forget." Isabella swallowed. "She said that." Leonardo tensed. Isabella noticed but didn't speak. The boy walked through the shop, touching the flowers with tender fingers. "Do these live forever?" Isabella moved closer. "No flower lives forever, but the ones you take care of live longer than pain." Nicholas nodded, like he understood more than any child should. That night, Leonardo sat in silence. Isabella made them tea. They didn't speak much, just looked at each other, and said everything without saying a word, until she finally asked, "Do you believe her? Who? Your ex-wife? Do you really think he's your son?" Leonardo paused, and that silence was the answer. "What are you hiding? There are things that don't add up. Dates, papers, a DNA test still pending. But more than that, what Nicholas is afraid, not of me, of her." That same week, Leonardo hired a private investigator. What he uncovered changed everything. Clara, his ex-wife, had been seen visiting private clinics with another man exactly 9 months before Nicholas was born. Medical records, timing, everything suggested the boy was not Leonardo's, but the deepest cut wasn't the lie. It was this. Nicholas knew, and he didn't want to leave him. Leonardo returned to the flower shop. Isabella was arranging white dahlias when he walked in. "Did you lie to me?" she asked, without turning. "No, I lied to myself." "What happened?" He placed a folder on the table. "This is Nicholas. He doesn't have my blood, but he has something worse. He has my reflection, the same loneliness I carried when I was his age. And now, I want to stay with him." Isabella lowered her head. "And me, you, are the only thing I don't want to lose. But I know asking you to accept all this is asking too much." She turned toward him. Her blind eyes didn't see, but they felt everything. "Do you know what it's like to live in darkness, Leonardo?" "Yes. Long before I met you." "Yes. Then you know the fear isn't what you see, it's what you sense. It's what might break you." Leonardo stepped forward. He placed her hand over his chest. "This doesn't lie. What I feel for you doesn't change. Not for him, not for anyone." She breathed slowly. "Then promise me this. No more lies. Not even to protect me." "I swear," he said. 1 week later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just the name written in rushed handwriting. Clara. Leonardo opened it with frozen fingers. "Leonardo, I can't be a mother. I've tried. I've failed. I'm leaving Buff. Not forever. One day, I may come back. But promise me this. If Nicholas ever calls you Dad, don't correct him. Because in his heart, you already are." Leonardo sat in silence and cried. Not for Clara, not for the lie, but because now, for the first time in his life, he knew exactly who he wanted to be. Days later, in a quiet courthouse, he signed the legal papers for Nicholas's guardianship. When he stepped outside, Isabella was waiting. She held no bouquet, just hope in her hands. "What now?" she asked softly. Leonardo took her hand. "Now, the real part begins, not the perfect life. The real one. The kind that hurts and heals." Isabella smiled. "Then let's build it. But not just for Nicholas, for us, too." Leonardo looked at her, eyes full of gratitude and quiet love. "You know what you are to me. What? The home I never knew I was looking for." She laughed through her tears. "And you are the silence my soul needed." That night, it rained. But it wasn't a sad rain. It was soft, warm, cleansing. As if the sky itself gave them permission to begin again. The end.